Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We ran into some technical difficulties with the webinar this morning, and we apologize for that, but we'll restart here, and it'll be available to rewatch as a recording as well going forward. My name is Timothy Lee, and I am a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on nickel exploration and development today. We will hear from John Lee, CEO of Flying Nickel Mining Corp. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss some fine print. During this Flying Nickel webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the Flying Nickel corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website, flynickel.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Flying Nickel. So we have Flying Nickel presenting today. The company is focused on the development of its Minago Nickel project in friendly Manitoba. With that, I now turn it over to John to update our audience on the company.
Thank you, Tim, for the introduction. My name is John Lee. I'm the founder and CEO of Flying Nickel Mining Corp. The company is traded on the Toronto Ventures Exchange. It is a relatively new company that came onto the listing in 2021. I myself have over 20 years of experience in the metals and mining space. Started out as an investor and then turned into running a mining company since 2010. And through the last 13 years, raised over $150 million and specialized in nickel. I've acquired the projects, nickel projects, one of the very few nickel junior CEOs that has experience in acquiring nickel projects in Well Green project in the Yukon, Shakespeare project in Ontario, Lynn Lake project in Manitoba. I was very, very fortunate to acquire the Minago project, which I believe is the best due to its grade, its location, its size, which we'll delve into today. Like I said, I believe Minago holds very dear to my heart because its grade is open pit optimized at 0.74%. Is one of the highest nickel nickel open pit optimized grades in North America is in Canada. It is located in the Thompson Nickel Belt, and that is the second largest in Canada based on historical production of 5 billion pounds of nickel, ahead of Voisey's Bay and just behind Sudbury. It has excellent infrastructure with immediate access to road and power. And in terms of size, it has over 1 billion pounds of nickel already today, approximately over 2/3 of measured indicated and about 1/3 in inferred, both grading at 0.74%. 84% of that resources on the Nose deposit and the 16% of the resources on the Northland deposit, which is the target for immediate exploration potential because only a very few drill holes have been made at the Northland deposit in the past. In addition, the company owns 197 square kilometers land package with excellent expansion exploration targets. You see the mag anomalies, the big one in the central, and then further targets in the northwest. Another interesting dimension to Minago just added this year or earlier this year is the PGM. As Flying Nickel conducted its maiden drill program in late 2022, the assay came out with a lot of PGM intercepts. You can see from the Nose deposit, we have over 100 meters of 0.3 PGM, over close to 70 meters of 0.8 at the Nose, and over 30 meters at a 0.8. And another 10 meters, 13 meters, 0.3 at the North Limb. So these assets caught us by surprise, and we then went into the core shock and spent better part of this year in 2023 re-assaying select representative old historical drill cores, close to 8,000 meters, and found very consistent correlation, positive correlation between the nickel grades and the PGM assays, grades that had not been previously assayed. So that program is coming to a conclusion, of which we anticipate to release a maiden PGM resource for Minago for the first time before September. And that is a very exciting development to add to the array, to add to the nickel dimension that's known at Minago. Let's talk about the Minago end product. The Minago had a feasibility study that was completed in 2022, including a very extended metallurgical testing. Over 6 dedicated met holes were drilled, and over 60 rougher and cleaner flotation tests were performed. Over close to 58% recovery was achieved based on 0.5% feed, and that recovery we expect to improve as we have now upgraded the cutoff and ended with a 0.7% nickel feed. The Minago concentrate at 20% is world-class. That is readily accepted around the world. In addition, boasts a very low carbon footprint, potentially the lowest in the world for a nickel project, given it's open pitable and that it utilizes power in Manitoba that is 100% hydropowered. The project lends itself nicely with electric mine fleet and autonomous driving, given its general topography, and it's ideal, and then because of its low carbon footprint, means that it's ideally suited for electric vehicle battery manufacture. Talk about transportation. The 20% concentrate will be trucked to the south and then by rail either east to Sudbury or Long Harbor or further to the eastern European smelters in the east, or to the west to the Sherritt hydromet processing facility in Saskatchewan, or further to the western seaport to the western smelters in Asia. And this Highway 6, which transects Minago, you see that on the map, is also the same route of which Vale transports concentrate today from Thompson further to the north. I want to just briefly go over the history, and Minago has a very lustrous history. Started with this discovery in the late 60s. Over 5 operators had drilled on the project, over 85,000 meters, including 2,500 meters by fly nickel. And over the time, close to $80 million have been spent. In 2023, Fly Nickel embarked on environmental act license renewal, environmental benefit agreement with the First Nations, which was completed, and that's binding agreement that governs during the life of mine the terms and conditions for Fly Nickel to be operating at Norway House, which is Norway House exclusive traditional territory. In addition, we're looking to publish the PGM resource in 2023, and that resource will be incorporated into the feasibility study to be released in early 2024, and followed by a construction decision. So by early 2024, we anticipate the company making a construction decision with all the requisite permits in hand to be able to put a shovel in the ground. And we're looking at a construction period of approximately 3 years. So if all goes well by 2027, Minago will be one of the very few greenfield open pit optimized nickel sulfide project to be commissioned into production and churn Minago nickel concentrate in 2027. It's one of the very few projects that's able to produce nickel concentrate out of Canada before 2030. Let's talk about the management. We collectively combined with over 130 years of experience in the mining industry, specialized in nickel. Featured Rob Van Drunen, who is the Chief Operating Officer, being the company since the company's inception. And he retired from Vale with over 30 years experience based in Thompson throughout his career, and still lives in Thompson. So he's had hands-on operating experience of open pit mines and underground mines as well, leading over 1,000 people and also managing the processing plant at Vale. We also have Ross Smith, over close to 30 years of experience, and he is an exploration guru in the Thompson Nickel Belt. Along with Doug Ramsey, with 40 years experience in permitting in Canada, with over 20 years in Manitoba, often represent the government of Manitoba as well as the First Nations. Andrew and myself each has around 20 years experience in the junior mining space. Adrian, who just joined us as VP of Exploration with a lot of hands-on exploration experience in Canada. You can see we have the permitting and operation experience to take the project into production, which we're capable to do and remains as an option for us to move forward. Some of you might know that Flying Nickel entered into a definitive agreement to acquire Nevada Vanadium in late 2022, and that transaction is on track to come to closing by Q3 of this year. It was slightly delayed due to the requisite technical report required to be filed by Nevada Vanadium. And the completed entity still be called Flying Nickel, will be owned 55% by the current Flying Nickel shareholders and 45% by Nevada Vanadium shareholders, and is one of the very few battery metals focused listed entity on the Toronto Ventures Exchange, with a diversified holdings in nickel and in vanadium in Nevada, and both are a strategic jurisdiction in North America. So each other acts as a hedge and insurance policy in this nickel and vanadium sort of metals commodity correction currently, and which we expect to come out of given the bullish fundamentals of the metals going forward. I want to briefly talk about the nickel market, and nickel price went up unprecedented levels to $50 a pound just 18 months ago due to the acute shortage of nickel. And since then, nickel has corrected back to $10 a pound, which used to be a very heavy resistance, and that is now a very strong support. And nickel in 2022 featured a deficit for the first time in over a decade, where the supply was below demand, and we anticipate that gap to widen due to the advent of electric vehicles and the nickel consumption into the battery metal space. Approximately half the nickel today is producing laterite, which is not fit for the EV space due to its heavy nickel footprint and the polluted nature of the acid tailings that go into the ocean, which makes the nickel sulfide space so much the rare and voracious and sought after in the nickel battery space. And as we see the likes of Australians and the trade and the Japanese are coming onshore to Canada to acquire specifically nickel sulfide projects. And the open pit head grades for nickel sulfide mines is expected to be halved to 0.2% from the current 0.4%, and that itself was halved only just 15 years ago from 0.8% in 2005, and which makes the Minago 0.74% open pit optimized deposit so much more valuable as time goes by. Well, that's it, gentlemen. Again, we're all about the metals that power the future. The company is trading on the TSX Ventures Exchange under the symbol FLIN, as well as this OTCQB under FLINF. As I alluded to and prefaced, I like Minago because of size, grades, and location, and hopefully I've impressed you upon those three particular attributes. And for now, thank you for attending. I will hand the control back to the moderator, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for a very informative presentation. We will now start the Q&A portion of this webinar. A reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We already do have a few questions. First, can you review the size of the deposit again?
Well, certainly. Flying Nickel owns 100% of a 97 square kilometers of land space, and 95% of the drilling goes into the current Minago resource, and that is split amongst the Nose deposit and the North Limb deposit. Collectively has just over 1 billion pounds of nickel in situ, and approximately around 700 million pounds of the nickel is in the indicated category, and about 300 million pounds of the nickel is in the inferred category, both grading at 0.74% nickel. over 60% of that resource is open pit optimized with a lot of exploration potential, particularly in the North Limb area. And that is very sparingly drilled. And 95% of drills goes into the nose and the North Limb deposit. And we, as we saw in the previous map, has a lot of exploration potential and targets in that 97 square kilometer land package. Tim?
Great. Thank you, John. Can you tell us more about relations with the First Nations and the local community?
Right. We have a great relations with the local communities. I myself was at Norway House, and the chief actually took me for a tour of the helicopter of the entire Norway House traditional territory. And the company signed an impact benefit agreement, and that is the final definitive agreement with Norway House that will where Minago deposit sits in its exclusive traditional territory of Norway House. So that agreement will govern over the life of mine the protocols and terms and conditions for between Norway House and the Fly Nickel. So Norway House has checked off on moving forward with this project. There are three other First Nations in surrounding the Minago project, of which the company is doing a of the government of Manitoba. It's not the company. Is doing this requisite consultation process that's taking place right now. And at the conclusion of that consultation process, the environmental ag license, which has been valid since 2011, will then be rectified and then be ready to go. So the Moose Lake, Grand Rapids, and Cross Lake, we're in the process. We're talking to them, and so far we have a very positive feedback. We're one of the few, I think, nickel sulfide project has actually had an impact benefit agreement in place, and with the consultation process moving towards the end of its towards completion. And yes, Tim, thank you.
Great, thank you, John. Given that the industry has been fairly busy, have you been able to get the people and drills over time to do the quality work that you need?
The answer is we're actually quite fortunate in Manitoba to have quite a few real seasoned and experienced drillers. So the company performed a 2,005 meter drilling, and it was completed. It's a little short, just over 2,100 we did, partly because of the late grant of the permit. And the Minago is a seasonal drill program. In the winter, we have a better access with the ground conditions. So we had no problem with the drillers, and so far so good. And we have 2 or 3 drillers that were available that are able to come on as requested. Tim?
Great. One question here: how much drilling have you done so far, and what is planned for this year?
Right. As I alluded to earlier, the company Fly Nickel did a maiden drill program actually it was in the winter or the early part of 2022, and the results were shared throughout in June to September of 2023. Just over 2,000 meters were drilled, 5 dedicated drill holes. I believe 3 was on the nose and 2 at the North Limb, and an additional 1 exploration drill hole for to the northeast. All five of the 6 drill holes intercepted nickel mineralization, and some of them were a lot shallower mineralization intercepted in the North Limb deposit. So that's very welcoming news. So it is really just the maiden drill validation drill program, and that met our expectations, in line with expectation with the resource modeling. Overall, it's historically 84,000 meters is being drilled. So it's a well-drilled program that had a historical feasibility study with a proven and probable resource. Now it's deemed as historic. The company is looking into a drill program for this winter, potentially with a JV partner to provide the funding necessary. However, given the current challenging market condition, the company is deploying funds, I think, as a priority to complete that PGM resource assay program, and then to come up with a PGM resource. I think that's going to provide a lot more value than the incremental nickel resource that could be added through a limited drill program over just 1 season. and then secondly, to complete a consultation process and then to have the environmental act license rectified. So these are the priorities for the company in 2023. However, I would not rule out a drill in the wintertime should additional funding become available and should the market condition improve. Tim?
Great. Now, obviously, you've been doing the PGM reassay program. How much value do you expect the PGMs to add?
Yes. Well, what's quite interesting there is a match, shall I say, between what we witnessed in the assays that come out from the lab that was performed by Fly Nickel, drilled and assayed by Fly Nickel, as well as the assays of PGM assays that was released by performed and released by the previous operators, and then also by the assays performed by Fly Nickel based on historical drill cores. So these assays grades turned out to be very consistent and positively correlated to the model and the nickel grades. And in addition, it also matches very well, Tim, to answer your question, with the PGM content in the nickel concentrate that we see from the studies, and which is around 10% of the overall concentrate grades. Therefore, what we're doing now, Tim, is really put an anchor or put the toggle into that feasibility study with a resource of which we can then actually incorporate the studies into, because we're handicapped or somewhat limited to reference the PGM in the nickel concentrate, of which we have limited payability. And some of the work we're doing right now is we're running a number of tests right now through SGS to potentially looking into separating that PGM stream from the nickel concentrate to improve the payables. So I would say the payables from nickel concentrate from the PGM is significant, witnessed by the grades in the nickel concentrate, as well as the grades and the assays from these representative already thousands of meters of PGM assays from the core, and these we believe that these PGM payables would contribute significantly, materially, to the overall economics of the project.
Great. Now, one question, circling back on the drilling, when was the 84,000 meters drilled, and is it still reliable?
Yes, there's one slide when I show the locations of how the concentrate potential route, and then to the right side of that is a brief history of the Minago project towards the end of the slide, either 9 or 10. And the project was discovered in the 1960s and had extended drilling throughout by 5 different operators. And a majority of that drill program assays had been checked and verified, and a majority of the core remains available. And some of the core photos are actually on the Fly Nickel homepage. So that assays is considered, the drill cores are considered current and have been incorporated into the resource estimate, Tim.
Okay, great. Going forward, would you look to bring in a joint venture partner or a strategic investor to help fund and develop the project?
All the options remain on the table. We certainly don't want to be handicapped by one way or the other. It's almost like you're playing poker. You want to foretell your exit strategy. And Tim, as you know, you were on site just 11 days ago, and we had over 10 or 11 strategic investing visitors on site. So I think we're keeping our options open. The priority right now is de-risk the project from technical and legal perspective. And once the feasibility study is published, and we'll be looking into different financing options, some may be involving strategic investors that's in the battery metal space, or in the nickel concentrate trading space, or it could be in the traditional steel industry, which still constitute over 80% of the current nickel offtake. In terms of structure, they could be coming in from debt financing or coming in as an equity partner or coming in at the project level. So all of that actually, in fact, is already under discussion. We have over 10 strategic players that had expressed interest, and several of them are in the data room that we're in active discussions with, Tim. So no options is off the table. We'll be looking to coming up with the best solution for our shareholders, and no pun intended. It is really genuinely believe that, and we do have the management with the requisite skill sets. Rob Van Drunen has a lot of context with the Valley personnel that in the Thompson through early retirement. So we are definitely we're capable of making this project to the next level. And also, Tim, because the project is very conventional, cookie cutter, open pit, and flotation, so we don't envision any challenging operating conditions or any specialized. We don't envision any sort of technical challenges in putting this project into production.
Great. One question here, a little more administrative question, but will the slides from this presentation be available on your website?
It is posted on the website as of this morning.
Great. One other question here, obviously with the merger with Nevada Vanadium, does Nevada Vanadium have its own funding already? Does it have cash? And if not, what are the priorities between the two projects?
Right, Tim. Part of the reason, as we ask between the merger, is to provide that almost a bit of an insurance or hedging policy amongst two very quality battery metals projects, and they're located in premium jurisdictions in North America. One in Manitoba and one is in Nevada, and that is the #1 jurisdiction for mining investment according to the Fraser Institute. In answering to your question, both companies has operating capital for much of 2023, but we'll have to rely on additional funding in the coming months. And in terms of the priority, the focus is really a function of the metal prices. I mean, both metals had a very volatile price action in the last 12 months, and also in the last years. And I think a lot of that will be dictated by market conditions. I think luckily we had a very strong institution and shareholder support. Currently, by Fly Nickel shareholders, over 55% owned by insiders institutions that had participated in all the prior 3 different financings done by Fly Nickel. And we're pretty confident that once Vanadium is merged into the entity, there are a number of very bona fide vanadium investors that will be looking into investing into Fly Nickel and to be dedicating their investment into the Nevada project. I think overall we're going to heed to the investors' preference, and for sure when they put money into the company, they indicated their preferences to how their funds would like to be allocated and be expensed.
Great. I think that's all the questions we have. I guess just kind of to review, what news would we expect to have over the coming weeks and months from Flying Nickel?
Fly Nickel has completed its PGM reassay program. We've, I think, over the past 3-4 months, had released over 5,000 meters or close to that of PGM assays that are very consistent and very wide and continuous, consistent with the model, and very wide and continuous, corresponding to the nickel grades. So we will be announcing the remainder, couple of holes, few reassay of PGM, probably within the next few days. And then that will be followed by the maiden PGM assay program, which we're very confident of coming up with one, given the results I've seen so far. And that would and then towards the later part of the year, we've been working very diligently. I would say 75% of our time right now is working with the First Nations consultation process, hand in hand with the Manitoba government. It's actually their responsibility, and we're there just to provide additional colors and assistance where possible. And if all goes well, we do anticipate the environmental ag license to be rectified by the end of the year, and that will provide us with all the requisite permits to actually put a shovel in the ground. And then 2024, we'll be looking into incorporating that PGM byproducts add-ons into the feasibility study. If the market condition warrants and if the funding warrants, as I mentioned in earlier question, that we could be looking at a modest drill program by the end of the year. So these are the major catalysts: a PGM resource, all the environmental license permit, and then early onset of 2024, a updated feasibility study.
Great. Well, with that, I'd like to thank John Lee for presenting today, and thank you everyone on the line for tuning in. Just a reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow afternoon when our webinar series continues with Latin Resources presenting Thursday, June 22nd at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day.